Narcissist Ensnared. Episode 17. Wynne sipped at his wine and opened the email that Ashley had just sent him. "Oh my God, he has found me. He is coming to get me." Wynne slammed his glass down and immediately rang Ashley's phone. All he received was the network message that her phone was unavailable. He tried again, but the result was the same. "What is going on?" he emailed back to her. He stood up and tried to ring again. No network coverage. Damn the isolation of Lee and Julie's house. Wynne did not know what to do. He could only contact Ashley by email, and he had no idea where Lee and Julie lived. All he knew was that they had a large property near the shores of the lake. He knew of the lake, and he knew that a road ran virtually all the way around it, but where the house was precisely, well, he had no clue as to that. Suddenly, his mobile phone rang. It was Ashley. "Hello? Ian, oh God, he's found me here. How has he found me here? We're terrified." He could tell by the background noise that she was outside. "Just slow down, Ashley. Where are you?" "I'm outside. Julie's calling the police." "Good. What has he done?" "I'd better go back in. Julie's waving at me. She doesn't want me outside. Help us." "How?" The call suddenly ended. Wynne immediately rang the number, but there was no coverage again. He typed an email. "Whereabouts are you?" "I will come to you." He waited. The minutes passed. A response finally came. "It is okay. Police called. No need for you to come." Wynne was not convinced. He did not know what had happened, but the panic in Ashley's voice was clear. She was terrified. Quite how Peter knew where she was unclear, but it was evident that he had received the letter from her solicitor, as planned, and his response was to go berserk. After the fact that Peter had raped her, Wynne dreaded to think what Peter might be capable of. No, he would try and find her. He had stood back long enough. It was time to confront this bullying bastard. An hour later, and Wynne was following the narrow road that meandered around the lake. It was pitch dark. The road had no street lighting, and it was only his headlights that afforded any light. He would halt and try the phone, but now he also had no network coverage, and therefore he could not even email Ashley to tell her that he was in the vicinity and to seek directions from her. He at least knew that he would be able to find her by her car, assuming it was visible from the road. Her BMW X5 stood out, and he knew her registration details. Wynne drove along the road, and he would slow down when he neared a house, checking the road outside and the drive for a sight of Ashley's car. So far, he had seen nothing. It was just after 10 p.m., and he had covered both the southern and the western sides of the lake. He feared that Peter knew where she was, and something was happening at that moment. Hopefully, though, the police had attended and were already there. He drove past another group of houses. There was no sign of her car. He was not even sure how close he was to the lake, for from the glare of his headlights, he couldn't see anything at all beyond what was in the headlights. He pressed on and checked a house that stood on its own. Nothing. He looked at his phone, which continued to show that he had no connection to the network. Wynne drove on further, and then spotted a sign indicating a single-track road. It looked particularly isolated. He thought that he would try that. He swung the car around and followed the undulating track. There was no house to be seen on either side of the road, and he wondered just where this track was taking him. Perhaps it just led to one of the many picnic areas that were dotted about the edge of the lake. The track turned left and dipped down, and he saw some house lights away to the left. He slowed his car, and as he drew level with the house, he could then see, in the glare of his headlights, the edge of the lake to his right-hand side. He looked back to the house and saw that there was a silhouette in one of the downstairs window, and whoever it was, they were holding a phone up, as if they were trying to obtain a signal. That had to be Ashley. Wynne looked along, and there, parked on a driveway, was Ashley's BMW, next to an estate car. He had found her. Thank God. He turned into the drive, the gravel crunching beneath the tyres of his car, and then pulled up next to Ashley's vehicle. He exited the car and walked to the porch and gently knocked. Nobody came to the door. He raised his hand and knocked again. After a minute, a middle-aged lady with brown hair came to the porch door. She eyed him suspiciously and approached the porch door with caution. She turned the key, unlocking the door, and opened it a fraction. "Yes?" she asked. There was only suspicion in her voice. "Hello, I'm Ian." She gave him a blank look. "Ashley's boyfriend," he added by way of confirmation. "Just a minute," she said, and closed the door. Wynne frowned. This was hardly the welcome that he had expected. Ashley then peered around the doorframe, and when she saw it was Ian, her face erupted in relief. Wynne pushed open the door and stepped into the porch. Ashley leapt at him, jumping onto him, wrapping her arms and legs around him. He was pinned against the door. "Thank God! Oh, thank God! Thank God!" she said, over and over again. Her cries of relief were mixed with howling sobs. Wynne tried to move her into the house, but Ashley would not let him. She clung to him, her arms tight around him. He shuffled forward, as if he was manoeuvring a fridge into the house, until he had crossed the porch and was on the threshold of the house itself. He could see the lady who had answered the door, presumably Julie, stood in the entrance hall. "You are an angel, an absolute angel. Thank God you have come," Julie remarked, her attitude towards Wynne having totally changed. It was clear that she had no idea who Wynne was, despite Ashley having apparently told them on Saturday evening about him. Wynne managed to release Ashley's grip on him. "How did you find us?" she asked. "I guess the big fellow upstairs wanted me to find you," admitted Wynne. "I just drove around the lake and then saw this single track and had a feeling, nothing more, that this house was down the track." "Well, I'm so glad you did." "Please, come in. Do you want a drink?" offered Julie. "Yes, please, just water." "There's wine," she offered. "I'm in the car." "Oh, you can stay here. In fact, we would both feel safer if you stayed," said Julie. Ashley nodded. "Sure, a glass of red then." They walked into a spacious lounge, where a log fire burned. A black Labrador was curled up asleep in a cage to one side. Various boxes and books were scattered around. Wynne waited until he was offered a seat, and sat on a large sofa. Ashley sat beside him, holding his hand. Julie returned from the kitchen and passed a glass of red wine to Wynne before filling a glass for herself and Ashley. He sensed that they'd both been getting stuck into the wine before his arrival. "Have the police been?" asked Wynne. "No, they just made a note and said to call again if anything happened. We're safe now you're here, though," said Ashley. "Mind you, we thought you were Peter when you pulled up," admitted Julie. "I was beside myself. I thought I was going to pass out," confessed Ashley. "That man is a monster, a total monster," said Julie. "So, what's been happening?" asked Wynne. "I came up here after Amelia had finished school. We had something to eat, and then the children had gone to bed when the telephone rang." "Your mobile?" asked Wynne. "No, the landline," remarked Julie. "Oh, right." "Anyway, Julie said it would be Lee calling, so asked me to answer it. I did. The person ringing said hello to me and then asked for Julie. I didn't recognise that it was Peter, because I didn't expect him to be ringing here. What did he say? Well, I asked who was calling, and he said that it was your soon-to-be ex-husband. I think I went into shock at that, and I didn't say anything. I just stood there, pointing at the phone. Julie took it from me. I then spoke to him and gave the bastard a piece of my mind, said Julie defiantly. I told him he should be locked up for what he did to Ashley. Do you know what the arrogant sod said? Wynne shook his head. He said he had no idea what I was talking about. Can you believe that? Said Ashley. Well, with him, yes, he just gets worse, said Wynne. So he starts yelling and shouting at me, and he started saying that Ashley had gone off with his children and not told anyone where she had gone, continued Julie. I told him I was calling the police and then put the phone down. I think he rang twice more after that, but we didn't answer. We then called the police and the phone rang again, and this time it was my brother, explained Ashley. What did he want? Queried Wynne. He started saying that Mum and Dad were worried about me. Apparently they had rung the house, and when nobody was answering and they couldn't get a reply on my mobile, they went to my house and found nobody there. They've a key, you see. They panicked and rang Peter to see if he knew where I was. Didn't you tell your parents where you'd gone? I had, but my brother says I hadn't. It's them twisting things around again, Ian. More control, you see. Peter checked my emails. He can access that old account, and he saw my email confirming to Julie that I would come over today, so that's how he knew where I was. So did he say he was coming here? Asked Wynne. Yes, he said he was coming over to put both of us straight about the lies we'd been telling about him. He said he'd seen the letter from my solicitor, and that it was just lie after lie. He was ranting down the phone line to Julie, explained Ashley. He's a maniac, added Julie. My brother got shirty on the phone as well, saying I had a responsibility to tell people what I was doing. He said it was typical of me to think just about me and nobody else and clear off to the middle of nowhere. Peter had been furious, saying I was disrupting the children's lives by taking them to the house of someone I hardly know. He doesn't realise that if he didn't behave the way he did, I wouldn't have to do this, would I? Well, quite. So, do you think you'll turn up now? It's quite late, asked Wynne. I doubt it, but it's not much of concern now that you're here, remarked Julie. Would you ring my parents, Ian, and let them know you're here now and I'm safe? Said Ashley. Wynne nodded. He stood up and went outside, pacing about the extensive lawn until he found a signal. He rang Ashley's parents' landline, but it went straight to a voicemail greeting. Hello, Mr. and Mrs. Kiem, this is Ian. Just to let you know that I am with Ashley now. There was some concern that Peter would turn up and act aggressively, so I've driven down to look after Ashley. So everything's okay now. My number is 077 3030 8900 if you want to call me, but the signal is poor here. Just letting you know that everything is fine. Thank you. He rang off and walked back up to the house. Ashley was stood waiting at the door. What did they say? Nothing, I just got the voicemail. Okay. Can we go to bed? I am exhausted. All this drama is just too much. Plus, we will have to be up early to drive back to the house and get Amelia ready for school. Thank you for coming, Ian. You really are an angel. Anything for you. He smiled and kissed her. They headed up to one of the guest rooms, which was strewn with boxes, denoting the recent occupancy of Julie and Lee. Wynne and Ashley lay on a large airbed, which Wynne found most uncomfortable, but Ashley fell straight asleep. She had hold of him, curled up in the fetal position, clinging to Wynne. She did not shift from this position all night, as if terrified that if she let go, he would disappear.